Welcome to the 2021 CMA convention. My name is Devin and I lead business intelligence and data strategy for Trinchero Family Estates Wineries. What I want to talk about a little bit today is the democratization of data, but also how that's leading to the rise of the chief data officer in our industry today. Data has completely transformed CPG, but I don't think we've seen anything yet. What we're going to see in the future going forward is how data is going to allow companies to avoid these massive ramp-ups in investment that we're seeing traditionally in CPG. So we're going to look at three main areas. The first one, we're going to look at the journey. How did we get here? And then what is the democratization of data? I think everybody has their own definition of what that is. And the last thing we're going to talk about is the old ways. The old ways are dead. I'm going to share a little bit of what some of the most advanced companies today are doing and what's waiting for some of the others as we evolve. Share. It all started with share. Many people may not know that A.C. Nielsen invented the term share in 1923. Prior to old AC coming around, we all knew what we were doing. We knew how we did last year, but we had no idea how I was doing versus my competition or versus anybody else. And then he came around in 1923 and started to gather data from grocery stores. Let's take a peek at this. 1923. That was it. That was Nielsen. That was state of the art. By the way, is that some sort of fancy Nielsen slide ruler I see there? I got 10 points or a nice bottle of Trinchero wine for anybody that can tell me in the breakout what they use that thing for. I have no idea. But the world of data today looks drastically different. First, there were the big boys, Nielsen and IRI. They had massive barriers to entry. Then all of a sudden, you started to see retailer data showed up. And then there was loyalty data, and then image recognition data, and planogram data. And then there were retailer portals. And then technology, as the technology started to grow, the dam really broke. Then you started to see e-com, and there was digital data and mobile panel data and crowdsourcing solutions. And as more and more data sets became available, boutiques began to multiply like spots on a Dalmatian. The standard delivery was monthly data. And then all of a sudden we heard the request, what about weekly? And you guessed it, the next request, could I get daily? And then yes, where we're at today with many companies, live streaming data. You've got big global nationals that are sitting down looking at these massive traditional spends that they have with big research firms that have created their own app stores. And their sales reps are out pushing their own app stores. And they're saying to themselves, you know what? I'm going to create an app store and I'm going to get faster data, more granular data. I'm going to gather personal identification information, and I'm going to make money on all of those apps when people use my apps, as opposed to paying a big global national research company for much slower data, much less granular data. We've also seen on the wholesaler side consolidation. And with consolidation, it's created these mega wholesales with these massive geographies. And they're starting to realize the value of the data that they collect naturally every day, just by their sheer size. And we are seeing today, these mega wholesalers are creating entire divisions to become data companies. You know who they're selling the data back to? They're selling their own data of what they do naturally every day back to their very own suppliers. Who would have ever thought you would see wholesalers starting and advertising divisions as data companies? But that's where we've come since 1923. To quote one of my favorite, Julia Louis-Dreyfus from Seinfeld, it truly has become an embarrassment of riches. But I'm ecstatic and happy to be embarrassed. Today, we are absolutely dripping with data, and data with stunning depth and breadth. As technology grew and the data along with it, there was this pendulum that began to swing. In the early days, it was the supplier and the marketer telling the consumer what they want. It's the old Henry Ford. You can have any color you want as long as it's black, right? But with data, the pendulum has swung the other way. Now it's the consumer that is dictating to the supplier what they want. There are manufacturers today that still see the business through the eyes of their brands and put all of their resource into category expertise. versus building very solid foundations that drive expertise on everything about the consumer. Those manufacturers that still see the business through the eyes of their brands are being left behind. Here's an example. I was at a beer wholesaler recently, at a large beer wholesaler doing a consulting event, and I walked into the building. Everybody from sales was there. And I walked in, and the first question I said was, "What business are you guys in?" And they all kind of giggled and looked, and one guy said, "Didn't you see the sign when you walked in?" I said, "Yeah, no, I didn't." And somebody said, "We're in the beer business." Okay. I hear that wine and spirits are really on fire right now. And one guy kind of got smart. "Oh, yeah, we just took on some wine and spirits brands." Okay. Well, we're in the beverage alcohol business. Okay. You guys, you doing any water or energy drinks? Yeah, we do that. You know what? We're in the beverage business. Oh, okay. This state had recently legalized marijuana, and I said, I hear that the Beer Wholesaler Network is lobbying the state to have all distribution of marijuana to go through the Beer Wholesaler Network. You think you guys are going to be selling weed pretty soon? And they all kind of looked around and said, "Probably." So I'm going to ask you again, what business are you in? And the answer is, you're in the consumer business. You need to start building that foundation of skill and expertise on every single thing that has to do with the consumer. My advice and direction to them was, if you want to grow your sales, stop selling your products. The retailer could care less about your products. Start selling the consumer. When I was at Nielsen, we used to joke that in every company that we consulted with, there was at least one senior sales leader that we affectionately called Captain Obvious. Captain Obvious would come into a meeting and he'd walk into the boardroom table and he would pound his fist on the table and he would state the obvious with enthusiasm. "Got to get sales up, guys. We got to drive rate of sale. Come on, you guys." And all these poor people would sit there and nod their head. "Yep, sure, boss." How? How do we do that? This is a 30-year-old output KPI, go-to-market mindset that, regardless of all of this embarrassment of riches of data and technology, it's still very, very common today. Growing up in this business, if I had a dime for every time that I saw this statement in a PowerPoint deck, I would be a millionaire. Now, I'll start the first phrase, and every single person that's watching can recite it with me. We got to put the right product in the right store at the right time, at the right place. My response has always been, cool. Walk me through how you do that today, and you'll hear it get real quiet, real quick. Come on, y'all, let's be honest. In every CPG company today and beyond, at the end of the year during budget review, every single company is saying the same thing. Holy cow. Look at how many data sources we have and what it's costing us. Are we getting anything for this? But the answer is revolution. The revolution is coming. That revolution for me is the democratization of data. Let's take a look. Before we go there, let me go back just a bit. There's one key piece of this puzzle in the journey that I kind of left out. About 15, 20 years ago, when I was at Nielsen, we began to see new, more user-friendly user interface from Nielsen and IRI. We saw things like Answers on Demand and liquid data from IRI. All of those were focused on bringing data to the masses, to the general population. You didn't need this massive team of power users anymore to manage your data. And it slowly kind of started, and then it began to spread like wildfire. Cue my buddy, David Attenborough.
After 7 months away, the herd is returning. Stretching back some 25 miles, it will take weeks for all the wildebeest to arrive. And nothing will stop them now.
Just as data sources were beginning to explode, we began to see suppliers making drastic cuts of those on-site power user teams that Nielsen and IRI traditionally interfaced with. And as more and more volume was coming from the chain environment as opposed to independent, more and more budget that was traditionally up in those headquarters began to migrate down closer to the store, closer to those chains. So that budget migration began to move from headquarters down to the street. And at the same time, Nielsen and IRI really never followed that migration of funds. They saw their revenue drop. They will tell you, you know what, the big boys just aren't spending what they were on research, or they've cut their budgets. No, they didn't. The dollars just migrated to a completely different direction. So they too began to cut Nielsen and IRI on-site teams. So just as you had data sources exploding, you had retailers and suppliers were reducing their teams like crazy. Nielsen and IRI were reducing their teams, and data was exploding and going through the roof. The industry has seen a massive atrophy in the bodies and the skills just when we needed the most. The sheer depth and breadth of data and analytics available today, combined with that budget migration away from corporate headquarters, has caused this very unique phenomenon. This is what companies look like today. These are disconnected data silos. Each of these individual data sources is extremely valuable, but when it's disconnected from the other pieces of data, its value is diminished. Disconnected data assets is the biggest hurdle that this industry faces today, but it's also potentially the biggest opportunity. You're going to have a massive set of vendors. These vendors are calling on every door possible within our organizations. Each vendor comes in and sells you a very unique set of data to a very unique team in a single department, slaps you on the back and says, I hope you do some good stuff with that. And then they leave it up to the supplier to stitch this patchwork quilt of data and assets together and hope you make something of it. There are three distinct silos of data that every supplier has today. In the front of the house, there's everything that has to do with the consumer and the shopper, and that data has become especially bright with the richness of digital and e-com today. And in the middle of the house, you have everything that has to do with the retailer and the entire category management, category development process. And at the back of the house, you have all this richness of data and demand and supply chain. As we used to say at Nielsen, there's really only two types of people when it comes to data. Those that feel that their power is hoarding the data and hoarding the insights, and they're the only ones that have it. And there are those that derive their power from setting it free, democratizing data assets. Progress has been slow, but many feel what's holding it back is really a structural gap. Enter the rise of the chief data officer. Some experts say that data is the new oil in CPG. So if data is the new oil, we need a refinery. If you've got a refinery, you better have a refinery manager, and that manager has to have a spot at the C-suite. The chief data officer, combined with the right skills, are the only thing that has the power to break down those data silos, finally begin to cleanse, harmonize, and integrate data assets from the front of the house all the way to the back of the house. What you're going to find is there's tremendous technology in AI and machine learning and natural language processing, and you pull these vendors in, what you'll find out very quickly is if your data isn't cleansed and harmonized and integrated, much of the wonderful advancements in data and technology that we have today are absolutely useless. You have all of these data assets. Because they're disconnected and dirty, they can't be used to their fullest potential. I see two distinct types of democratization coming: horizontal and vertical. Once data has a seat at the boardroom and you've established this foundational cleansed and integrated data set from the front of the house to the back of the house, your reality will begin to change. In the world of AI, machine learning, natural language processing, technology has the ability to analyze data assets horizontally across the organization. Let me give you an example. When COVID hit, cognitive core systems can see that consumer purchase frequency decreased. And then it starts to look at the middle of the house, and it's seeing that large pack sales are starting to jump at retail. There's more distribution of large packs at retail. There are more features and displays from the buyers at retail. It can then automatically alert demand and supply chain so they can rapidly get ahead of that trend versus their competitors. Even forward buying materials and talking to their growers. We have technology today that's mapping flavor trend migration across not only the United States, but across the globe. So we can get ahead of trends and create products that the consumers will want in the future. We have the Internet of Things using passive listening, pulling data from billions of devices, allowing us to develop very custom targeted products and distribution on a micro level. The last frontier is vertical democratization. This is my favorite one. Up until now, everything that we've spoke about, if you think about it, all those data assets, all that material, it really is designed to kind of stop at key accounts, regional accounts, cat dev. But at every headquarters, there's a team of folks up there that I call content creators. It's the brand team, the cat dev team, senior leadership, shopper marketing. They're buying tons of data and creating selling materials and programs. But below them, you have what I call content consumers. It's the bottom of the pyramid. It's where all of the sales organization is. It's where the vast majority of the human beings are. But something happens with all of that data and all of those assets as we move down through the organization and we get closer to the street and we get to regional accounts and territory managers, let alone a wholesaler rep. Three things happen. The awareness of those assets, access to those assets, and God forbid, the ability to drive cases goes to almost zero. Here's an example. Every sales rep performs three key functions when they walk into a store. As soon as they walk into the store, one of the first things they do is they survey the store. They look for their own opportunities and they look at competitive performance. When they find those opportunities, they engage a store manager and they have to sell. They need custom selling materials. Then they go to the shelf, they do inventory, and they input an order. In most companies and wholesalers, the process, the interaction with data and selling materials is what I call a pull process. Every single person in the company has to go get what they need. I got to log on here. This data is on a shared drive. This one's on the OneDrive. This one's got a dashboard. I got to go get it, and I got to pull everything. We have tools and technology today to pivot that process from a pull, go get, to a custom tailored push just for me. Today, we're developing systems that pull the data as it becomes available. AI and machine learning do the analysis for us. I don't need that team. Why do I need a team to do the analysis? AI and machine learning can get me 80% of the way there. They draw out the biggest issues and opportunities for me. But then it'll go one step further. Just because I know I've got a gap somewhere is wonderful. But it'll also proactively do the analysis on what I call the 5 W's. Where am I underperforming? Why? What channel? What chain? What brand? What SKUs? And then, oh, by the way, let's go into those input KPIs. Which of the 4 Ps on this specific issue with this brand and this geography, which of the 4 Ps should I focus on? Which of those is going to have the biggest impact on my brand? Technology has the ability to pull the data, analyze the data, segment the data, and deliver insights automatically for us. But at this point, we still haven't made it actionable. We still haven't used it to drive sales. That final step is the one that many, many companies overlook, and I call that mapping. The only way to drive sales is to have Larry on Route 6 do something different tomorrow in HEB number 2 than he did today. All of those riches of data and all of those assets are absolutely worthless unless they flow all the way down to the fingertips of the individual that is carrying my cases into the store. Digital and mobile technology are using native geo capabilities in mobile devices. It knows that I'm Devin and that I'm in Dallas and I'm in off-premise. And every single data asset and every single piece of selling material that I need are custom pushed to my fingertips. As I walk up to the store, it grounds me in the consumer, and it immediately pops up on my screen. These are the highest indexing brands for you in this store with this specific store consumer. It knows what format I'm in, and it immediately pulls up a store layout. And it uses all of that analysis to start to give me guided direction by department, by store. Where should I put a display? Where's a new distribution opportunity? Where should I check on pricing? And it guides me through the store at my fingertips, custom tailored to me. Let's go back. Finally, putting the right product in the right store at the right place at the right time. Senior leaders today don't have to pull data or wait for reports. The technology will analyze data threats and opportunities and proactively send them alerts. Custom input KPIs are pushed to the sales rep as they're entering the store. So this is where I say the theme. The old ways are dead. The key to this democratization is embracing the role of the chief data officer. Forbes put out a report recently. 77% of CIOs say that data, all of that data that they're spending and they're looking at, is not being used to its full potential. How is that possible? 92% of CIOs would like to see a chief data officer role created. In 2012, just 12% of Fortune 1000 companies had a CDO. By 2018, it was 68%. Without this structural role, if your organization doesn't have a chief data officer yet, there's a simple roadmap that you can follow to begin the journey. 5 steps. Number 1, start to pivot your organization from that traditional rear view mirror, historical go-to-market process to one that is consumer-centric, predictive. Number 2, pivot from the old traditional Captain Obvious output KPI focus to continuous improvement on the 4P input KPIs. Number 3, I call it the bridge. Begin to build a bridge from everybody in your organization having to pull data to a custom curated push. Many of the data reports that you have today have the ability to do tolerance-based custom pushes. Do one, just start. Everything else will flow from there. At the end of the day, focus on whatever's available to you. There are companies like Intera Solutions that specialize in horizontal democratization of data. There's other companies like Mediafly. I've been working with them for years. They're way down the road on things like digital selling transformation with the ability to put custom curated data and selling materials at the fingertips of a specific rep for a specific store. Thanks again for listening, and remember, data's the new oil, but it has to have a seat in the boardroom.